Greetings, everyone. I am Rafael Tasso, and welcome to Aim to Thrive, Wellbeing Education for the construction industry, where we can learn life skills to move from a surviving to thriving mindset. Wellbeing empowerment through education. The impact of alcohol and drugs in the workplace has significant consequences, including fatalities, serious injuries, reduced productivity, high turnover, absenteeism, and reputation risk, to name a few. That doesn't include the emotional and mental effects of the workers' well-being. Alcohol and other drugs are a significant issue for many in the construction sector. A recent study of workers and employers found that nearly 1 in 5 construction workers indicate colleagues are working hungover or stoned from time to time, or a lot of the time at their workplace. As well as developing an alcohol and drug policy for your company, it is important to educate and lead your workers on how they can better manage their drinking habits. So today it is my pleasure to introduce Janet Thompson, the CEO from the Retreat, New Zealand. Janet has kindly agreed to share insights and strategies to educate and help lead our workers. Janet, welcome to Aim to Thrive.
Yeah, thanks, Raphael.
Janet, please share a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about the Retreat New Zealand.
Yeah, thanks. So the Retreat New Zealand, we're a charity, and we've been operating for over 9 years now, and we operate in the area of alcohol and drug rehabilitation. So our main program is a 30-day residential program, and what that does is it separates people from their drinking or drugging environment. It gives them an opportunity to get the physical, get over the physical demands of a drinking and drugging lifestyle, and also gives them the strategies to stay stopped. I myself, I am an alcoholic, and I haven't had a drink for over 12 years now. So I've gone from being a daily blackout drunk to somebody who's living a life without alcohol.
Great. Janet, what have been your observations over the past few years with people's drinking habits, and what changes have you noticed, if any changes at all? So the last few years have been a big few years. Yeah,
so alcohol and drugs, I think they've always been a big problem, and I don't think it's any worse or better, save the pandemic. Of course, over the last 2 years, with people having to isolate, people have noticed, we have noticed a big increase in people drinking over the last particular 2 years, but that can be tied directly back to the pandemic. But I don't think there's been any increase or decrease in the amount people are drinking. But what I've noticed is that there's an increase in the stigma around alcoholism. It's not okay to admit that you've got a problem with alcohol or drugs. It actually is okay, but it doesn't feel like it's okay. And also, I think social media has had a big part. I mean, I'm forever grateful that social media wasn't a big thing back in my drinking days, because what that meant is that when I did something silly, or I fell asleep somewhere where I shouldn't have, or I did something or said something I shouldn't have, it was just between me and that person. These days it gets shared over social media. You're able to send messages that you maybe regret sending in the morning, and it just becomes a lot more in your face. So I think there's been no increase in the amount, but certainly there's been an increase in the consequences.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Social media and yeah. How that's I guess added towards the way people can be, they can feel like they're under the spotlight. You never really thought of that. Any other sort of experiences that you've sort of had, or when speaking with people, some things that they've sort of given you back, told you regarding that in particular?
Well, just going back on that social media thing, I mean, the thing is when you're having a problem with alcohol or drugs, you know you're having a problem, but you don't want to admit it. So you have this big barrier up so that, you know, that people can't see. And so, you know, if you say something silly on a message or do something silly and it gets shared by yourself or somebody else, you know, we tend to just laugh it off and say, oh, you know, it was a big night, ha ha ha, you know. But you know, the person that has caused the problem, they'll just be dying inside. They'll be so embarrassed, but they'll laugh it off as if it wasn't a big deal. When and if it's a one-off, it probably isn't a big deal. But if you know you've got a problem with alcohol or drugs, and then something like that happens, it's just, you know, it's like kicking an own goal. You know, when you kick an own goal, you know you've kicked an own goal. You don't need people to keep reminding you of it. And so to be reminded of it, you know, that whole stigma, it's, you know, it's embarrassing to admit you're an alcoholic, and it's embarrassing if you do something that, you know, isn't okay in your own set of values, and you know, and you tend to just, you know, push it down.
Yeah, well, think Kiwis on the whole are, you know, we're sociable. We're social drinkers, but when does drinking become a serious problem for someone? And what are the warning signs? When do people need to consider professional help? And at what stage should friends and work colleagues step in?
Yeah. Okay. So please don't think I'm anti-alcohol, because I'm not. You know, alcohol is a big part of our culture, and for most people it's a sociable thing that people do, and it doesn't cause a problem. And so, you know, if I could drink safely, I would drink, but I can't drink safely, and I know that. So the warning signs, what somebody needs to say to themselves, is alcohol or drugs, or is alcohol causing a problem in my life? And if you can just ask yourself that question honestly, and if the answer is yes, well, then you need to do something about it. And so you'd think that the logical answer is, well, I'll just stop drinking for a while. You know, if it's causing a problem in my life, I'll stop doing it. That will make the problem go away. What we find is that when somebody's developed a bit of a dependence on alcohol or drugs, and then they stop drinking, that's when a lot of the problems start, because alcohol is not our problem. Alcohol is actually, in the initial stage, alcohol is our solution. Our problem is actually living life. So, you know, for me, I had a bit of stress. I was a very successful worker, and I had a big job, and I'd come home at the end of the day, and that glass of wine or bottle of beer or whatever it was, it would just take the edge off the day. You know, you could just sit back and relax and say, phew, you know, that's it just seemed to take the edge off. So it was my solution. So what happened for me is that when my solution became the problem, then I was really in trouble, because I still had the initial problem. I still was working in the big job, and I was still doing all of those things, but now my solution had also become my problem. So it was actually quite a big deal. So asking yourself honestly, is alcohol causing a problem in my life or in the life of others? You know, my family, my workmates. Often in the construction industry, I know we've actually got 3 LBPs in our residential rehab at the moment. And I know that co-workers cover, and you think you're doing them a favour, and probably for a while you are, but when you're continuously doing it, trust me, you're not doing them any favours at all. You're just delaying the inevitable crisis when it comes. So there's kind of 3 things that you might recognise as being a problem. The first one is that you drink every night, and the 1 glass of wine or the 1 bottle of beer or the 1 or 2, which wasn't having any effect on you, has started to increase, and all of a sudden the glasses of wine have become bottles of wine. And you say to yourself, I'm going to drink less, but you find that you're not. You want to drink less, but you find that, oh, I've just drunk that whole bottle of wine tonight. I was only going to have 1 glass. How did that happen? So if the amount that you're drinking is increasing, and intuitively you know that you should be doing something about it, but it's not happening, then you might have a problem. The other one is that you don't drink every night, but when you do drink, you kind of lose control of what happens. You don't remember parts of the night. You know, we've talked about social media. You start to tell little white lies to cover up your drinking. So you don't drink every night, but when you do drink, you inevitably drink too much, and you go past that point of sociable drinking into causing chaos for either yourself or someone else. And the other one is when you're not drinking, you're actually thinking about drinking. So you might say, okay, well, I haven't got a problem because I only drink on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, so I haven't got a problem. If by Tuesday you're starting to hold out for Friday, you're starting to think about when your next drink's going to be, and yeah, so when you're starting to think about when the next drink's coming, maybe that's a warning sign as well. So, and it won't take long. Often my experience is people start as weekend drinkers, then they become Thursday to Sunday drinkers, then Thursday to Monday, and then yeah, it just you end up becoming daily drinkers. So obviously absenteeism starts to be a thing. Yeah, I think I might have rambled on a bit there, but hopefully I've answered the question.
No, not at all, not at all. The other part of the question, Janet, was when should friends, family, and work colleagues, you know, if they think they can see a change in a person with their alcohol or, you know, their drug habits, when should they intervene, or should they, or how do people go about trying to help someone? In your opinion, what's the best way?
It's hard to have those courageous conversations, and if you're noticing somebody's alcohol or drug use, that's probably the time that you need to have the conversation, and just say, hey mate, you know, are you okay? I noticed that, you know, you're coming to work hungover every day, you know. Maybe, I mean, if you know, you can ring up somebody like myself and we could make a call to talk to the person, although sometimes, you know, that's a bit counterproductive. It's just having the courageous conversation. You know, I've noticed that you're drinking quite a lot. Are you okay? Be prepared for them to tell you to fuck off, because they'll have their barrier up. I mean, if they, even if that's what the result is, you will have planted a seed. It will have been, oh, they've noticed, you know, and yeah, don't give up. I've got this saying, I'd rather step on somebody's toes than step on their grave. And you know, particularly if somebody's drink driving, you know, or has the potential to cause harm to others, you know, it's being a good friend to speak up.
Yeah, sure thing. So being courageous and being consistent and not giving up and continuing to plant the seed of, you know, that helping someone identify that they have a problem, that's the sort of the main sort of ideas that you would sort of suggest.
And make it okay to ask for help. I mean, if somebody has crossed the line and they've become dependent on alcohol or drugs, you know, this isn't something that they can cure by themselves. Alcoholism and addiction is actually a disease. And, you know, you wouldn't say to somebody, if somebody came to you and said, and God forbid this doesn't happen, somebody came to you and said, look, I've been, you know, I've got cancer. You wouldn't say to them, oh, well, just try harder and see if you can't get rid of that cancer on your own. I mean, that's just ridiculous to say that, but that's what people say to alcoholics or addicts. You know, they just say, what do you mean you think you need help with your alcohol intake? You know, just don't drink. Just when I was drinking, telling me not to drink was paramount to telling me not to breathe. I just could not do it on my own. I couldn't imagine a way out of it.
Sure.
And so, yeah, you need to make it okay to ask for help.
Sure. What was the turning point for yourself, Janet, where you decided for yourself that that was enough and that you were going to seek help? At what point, what stage were you at then, or what happened for you to sort of have that desire to sort of help yourself?
Yeah, I actually didn't think alcohol was my problem. I thought alcohol was the only thing that was any good in my life. I thought that everybody else had turned into assholes and everything was particularly bad, and alcohol was my only friend. And I was actually on an overseas working trip, and I was at a place I'd always wanted to go to, and I was really excited to go there. And what happened for me is that I just spent the whole time in the hotel drinking. You know, I participated in the work activity, but when I had any free time, I just spent the whole time drinking. And then on the way back, I just had this realization. I thought, oh my God, I've just been in a place I've always wanted to be, and I've just spent the whole time in my hotel room drinking. I haven't gone and seen the things I wanted to see or done the things I wanted to do. And then I had this realization that, oh my God, I can't remember the last time I went to a live sports game. I can't remember the last time I went to a concert. All of a sudden I realized that I was stopping doing things that I loved, and I didn't actually realize that it was happening to me. And so that was a turning point for me. I thought, I actually thought I might have a brain tumor. That was my initial diagnosis on myself, because I said, couldn't possibly be the alcohol. But yeah, that's how much, you know, we can deny that the alcohol is an issue. But all of a sudden it became obvious to me that, and there is another saying, I don't want to bombard you with sayings, is that you can give up everything for one thing, or you can give up one thing for everything. And that's proved to be true for me. When I finally had the courage to admit I had a problem with alcohol and I sought help, I've started to regain the things back in my life that I'd stopped doing, you know, like, and I have a very full life now. Back then my life was very narrow. It was going to work, going home and drinking.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, so self-realization is the key then, isn't it? When you sort of realize, an individual realizes and is honest with themselves that they have you know, that they need some help. So
and in my case, I didn't have anything catastrophic happen, but often, and it's unfortunate for some people, something catastrophic has to happen to them to actually get that self-realization. They have a workplace accident, they have a car accident, you know, they cause damage to one of their family members that they wouldn't otherwise have done, and so, you know, I'm grateful that I didn't have a catastrophic incident happen, but often that's what it takes for somebody to get jolted back into reality, and that's a real shame. Yeah,
sure thing. And that would apply to the construction industry. You know, it's already a high risk environment, so if people are coming to work hungover, then that certainly opens up the opportunity for bigger risks to occur. So yeah, no, I totally understand
absolutely that. And I know this to be true. Often if people come to work hungover, they might take another drug to actually help them get through the day, to increase their energy level, and you know, and I know that, you know, weed and meth are a big issue in the construction industry as well. And you know, if you're putting that on top of alcohol, you know, like you go out, you get pissed, you have a hangover, you come to work, have a quick puff to get your energy levels up and get you through the day. You're just compounding one thing on top of the other on top of the other, and it's not sustainable. Something's going to give. Something's going to give.
Yeah. No, look, that makes total sense. Janet, what does successful residential rehab look like, and how does rehab differ from detox?
Okay, so a detox is the initial stage where you're getting over the physical dependence. So a detox would be anything from 3 to 7 days for alcohol, and it removes you from your drinking environment. You might need medication. and it just gets you off the booze in that initial part, and often doctors will prescribe medication to help you through it. If anybody is thinking that, you know, oh, I'm drinking too much and I must stop, I would urge you to seek medical, you know, go to your GP before you do it, because it can be dangerous just going cold turkey, depending on how much you've been drinking. So a detox just gets you over that initial phase of stopping drinking. What rehab then does is gives you the strategies and the tools to live life without drinking, or to live life without depending on alcohol. So you don't get cured by going to rehab. You know, if anybody tells you that, you know, go to a 30-day residential rehab and you'll come out the other side and you'll be cured, they're just talking bullshit. You know, that is not true. What the good rehabs will do is they'll tell you that you've now got a condition that you need to manage for the rest of your life. Like my brother is an insulin-dependent diabetic. He has to take an insulin injection every day to keep his life in balance, and to keep his body functioning well. And so he has a condition he has to manage. I have a condition I have to manage on a daily basis. And so it's tantamount to the same thing. So a successful rehab will have a lot of after support. The 30-day residential rehab is really just the start. You know, after that rehab, you have to go back to living life again. You have to go back to your job. You go, if you're lucky enough to still have one, go back to your family. And so after support is really, really important.
Janet, if there were people listening to our conversation now, and you were to give them some steps to overcoming their addiction, or sort of guiding them in the right direction, what would your advice be? Admitting
you have a problem. I mean, that's the first step. And while it sounds really easy, it's really, really hard to admit you have a problem, particularly in New Zealand, particularly if you're a bloke, particularly if you're in an industry like the construction industry. Admitting you've got a problem is really, really hard. But once you admit you've got a problem, that you then can start to look for a solution. And you know, and I would urge people to, you know, admit that you've got a problem before something catastrophic happens. But sure. Yeah, admitting you've got a problem and asking for help is also, you know, that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. Asking for help isn't hard. There's lots and lots of help out there available. You don't necessarily have to take yourself away on a 30-day residential rehab. There's lots of other help. Your local community alcohol and drug service might be able to help you. There's lots of help available, but actually asking for it is really difficult. And also I would urge people to go to their employer, and I would also urge the employer to treat alcoholism as a health issue, not as a disciplinary or a behaviour issue. You know, if I can say anything to the managers or the construction leaders, it's make it okay for people to ask for help. And the converse to that is, once you've made it okay for people to ask for help and they don't, then be really, really consistent about what's not okay. A lot of people kind of cover up for co-workers. Oh, you know, he's just a big drinker. You know, he's a good worker, but he's just a big drinker. You're probably not doing him any favors by letting him get away with things. Yeah. Provide him the opportunity to ask for help, him or her, the opportunity to ask for help, and then when they do ask for help, provide it, but be really clear and persistent about what's not okay and what's okay. Yeah, and sure. if somebody just keeps on breaking those rules, you might end up having to sack them, but it might be the biggest favor that you end up doing for them. You know, the worst thing that you can do is asking. And covering up for them and thinking that it's going to get better. If somebody's having a problem with alcohol or drugs, it isn't going to get better. It's just going to progress and get worse. Yeah. Janet, have you worked with any companies where they did have a
open sort of conversation with their staff and provide support? Have you got any experiences working with those companies, and is there anything that you can share with me that you observed to work really well?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had employers approach us, and the thing is that, you know, that there's a cost to our rehab. We're a charity, but we don't get government funding, and it costs the 30-day programs in round figures about 12 grand. So that's a big investment. But if you've got a good worker and you've had that worker for a long time, and all of a sudden it's starting to you know, their performance is starting to fade away, they admit they've got a problem with drinking, they're willing to do something about it, actually advancing them the money to come to residential rehab is something you could do, and take it back off their wages over time. We've had a couple of employers that have actually paid for half of it themselves, and they've seen it as an investment in their worker, you know, and I think it's been tax deductible as well, but don't quote me on that, I'm not an accountant.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, actually making it okay to ask for help. And then also too, I've had a lot of meetings with employers when somebody's coming back on the job, because that's the other thing, is that, you know, what do you do about the workplace drinks if you've got somebody that's an alcoholic on your staff? You know, does that mean we can't drink around them anymore? Actually, that's not the case. It's not the case at all. You're not the ones with the problem. The person that's the alcoholic, they will know what to do. It'll just make them feel worse about themselves if people try to change what they're doing around them.
Right. So just continue on as per normal.
Yeah. But have non-alcoholic
alternative
substitutes available. Yeah. It's hard to get across in this kind of YouTube environment, but, you know, we'll sit down with workers and have any questions and answers. You know, okay, well, Pete's coming back on the job on Monday. You know, this is what you can do to support him. You know, if it needs that. Often it doesn't need it. People can just come back into the workplace and they'll be fine.
So you need people within a company that are leaders. They understand the current situation with an employee that's having problems, challenges, and their role is to have an open conversation with the rest of the staff and almost sort of create a pathway for that person to return and build a supportive sort of culture in the background there for that person on their return. But in creating that supportive culture, it's not preventing that company from continuing, you know, having their social drinks on a Friday and having their get-togethers. Would that be the best way to sort of summarize what you've said, Janet?
I think so. I think that's what I said. It's all about it's about normalizing alcohol, and it's about normalizing alcoholism. You know, it's not a, you know, a person who's an alcoholic, it's not a bad person or a weak person. They're just a person. Like for me, I'm a boss, I'm a worker, I'm a mother, you know, I'm a partner, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm all of those things. And oh hey, I also happen to be an alcoholic. Doesn't define who I am, it's just part of who I am. And it's my responsibility to weave that into my life, not other people's responsibilities to you know, try and make it easy for me. That would just piss me off, to be honest. You know, it's my issue to manage.
So self-realization and self-responsibility seems to me the key things that are coming from what you're sharing. You know, taking responsibility for yourself, reaching out for help, having an open conversation with an employer, explaining your situation, asking them if you've got that relationship with them, if there's support that they can provide, and working in with your employer, and then having guidelines saying, hey, look, this is not to accommodate the conversation is not to accommodate the, you know, drinking behavior. It's more you know, you've got your guidelines which you're going to work within, and I guess the last thing you want is to be coming to work and being hungover or maybe intoxicated and thinking that that's going to be okay because you've shared that with your employer.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so,
you're not doing anybody any favors, and you know, and you know, I'll repeat what I said before. If alcohol's causing a problem in your life now, you probably need to do something about it, because it's not going to get better.
yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, it's a
big
little bit
part of,
like saying, okay, well, I know I've got cancer. I'll just pretend I haven't got it for the next year and hope that it gets better. It's not going to get better.
yeah, you've got to use your own initiative, and you've got to have a preventative approach, don't you? You go, look, I've got a problem, and before it becomes an even bigger problem, I need to get a plan in place. And you need to, I guess, have that sort of conversation with yourself, a very honest conversation with yourself. Would you agree with that?
And it's okay. You know, that's the thing. I mean, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to admit that you've got a problem, and that's the culture that we need to get into the workplace.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah. And when and it's not okay to use it as a reason for poor performance or for unsafe practices in the workplace or whatever. You know, that's not okay. So just being really clear about, you know, about what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, sure thing. Janet, my last question is, what sort of helped, like, you went through your own journey, really appreciate that you shared that with us. What helped you throughout your transformation, you know, from where at one point you had a drinking, you know, that was your solution, and then you had self-realization that in fact it was becoming a problem for yourself, and then you would have gone through your own process to sort of get yourself off that dependency on alcohol. What helped you the most to get off it?
Well, I mean, I went to a 30-day residential rehab myself.
Yes.
And so that just separated me from my physical drinking environment for long enough to get over that physical dependence. And then just surrounding myself with like-minded people. I mean, I've still got my old friends, but I also have other friends who have been on the same journey, and they kind of understand. I mean, it's interesting with, you know, an alcoholic appears to feel things more acutely than other people, although we won't admit that. And so being able to talk to other alcoholics and other addicts, and of course in the role I'm in now, I get to do it every day. So
sure.
You know, yeah. But you know, surrounding yourself with like-minded people is really really important.
Janet,
and forgiving yourself as well.
Right.
I mean, that sounds a bit, you know, over the top, but you know, in my case, I felt like an absolute failure and a loser and a piece of shit for the fact that, you know, that I wasn't able to stop drinking on my own. I had to go away to rehab, and you know, I had to be able to say to myself, actually, it's okay. You know, it's okay to have done that. And get over those feelings, that shame and that regret and that remorse, and you know, stopping dwelling on all the things I hadn't done, and then starting to enjoy all the things that I was starting to do again.
Yeah, sure thing. Janet, thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing ideas. Really appreciate it, and I'll ensure to put a link to the retreat underneath our video talk. And I hope to be in touch in the future. Maybe these workshops are something we can work on in the future. So thank you so much.
And look, more than happy if anybody wants to give us a call just for a bit of advice. You know, we're here 24/7. Got an 0800 number. More than happy to help.
Unreal. I'll make sure to put that 0800 number in the link below our chat.
Cheers.
Okay. Thank you, Janet.